Greetings and salutations, DMs, GMs, referees, judges, game operations directors, and all other varieties of storytellers. This is your DM, Scott. And today I'm joined by...
your DM, Bill. And with us is...
Lou. And it's time for a Monster in Minutes. This week, we're talking about rust dragons?
Yeah, they're a thing. Not in 5e, but they're a thing.
I don't know why they're not in 5e. Well, yeah, there's a lot of things not in 5e.
There is, and that is...
They're too busy churning out other books to spend a little TLC with the monster manual. And...
Yeah, you're right. I like 2 and 2.5 because that was the most complete rule set.
It was.
That I think was ever published. I looked into the crap that 4th edition put out. And sorry for those of you that love 4th edition, but we're all entitled to our opinions, however wrong it may be. It's 5e just, and you know what? I don't think 5e is ever going to have a chance to achieve that level of, that level that 2 did, right? We're going to end up with.
Well, no, because I'm sure in a very short time it's going to be 5.5 or 6, or they'll jump right to 7.
I think it'll go 5.5, so it'll be like going from 2 to 2.5, so it wouldn't be too much different.
We had
except lack of content.
Yeah, 20 glorious years of 2 and 2.5.
I still have my altar in the backyard.
It was a magical time.
Yes, it was.
Magical time indeed. But we digress. We're talking about rust dragons.
My patron animal.
They're
That's
cool.
They
I like rust dragons. We took this from a lot of this information from the Draconomicron, not the Draconomicron that is the chapter of Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, but the publication of the Draconomicron, which I want to say 2003.
Yeah, thereabouts, yeah.
4th edition, 3.5.
The Rust Dragon was out before that.
Yeah, but a lot of this...
Oh, a lot of the information was like, yeah,
from
probably 3.5-ish.
Yeah, I don't even remember. You know, it's one of those... It's probably a... 4th edition's like a repressed memory because, you know, it was a traumatic experience.
Well, I've bared like live wires and electrocuted myself between my toes just to see if I could purge 3.5 and 4 from my memory.
Yeah, it was a bad time for D&D gamers.
I'd rather go back through the Satanic Panic.
Yeah,
but
I mean that was a picnic compared to 4.0, and the smell of burning steaks and holy water being splashed on you as you walked by with your D&D books.
I think I've been spit on personally by several clergymen, including bishops. So, you know.
Yeah, it was a
tough time.
I was about to say something, but I caught myself. Let's just...
Lou's going to cut that out as that anyways.
Yeah, let's just move on with this.
Once again, I make it to the editing floor. But yeah, let's move on.
So where can you find them, Bill? What book?
Unfortunately, you cannot find it. We've already talked in 5e. You're going to have to dig deep into the archives of Dungeons & Dragons lore. Modify these beasties to your 5th edition game is probably your best bet, but that's not so bad. The conversion is easy, and anything published from the past should always be fair game in your D&D campaign. I mean,
always.
There's a huge, massive resource, especially monsters with 5th editions appears to be ignoring. So you kind of have to, kind of jury rig these things, and modify them for 5th edition.
Yeah, there's what, 50 years of D&D material.
Yes,
that is suitable for converting to your 5th edition game.
Relatively quick and easy, especially if you do a couple of them, then it becomes second nature.
Yeah.
You can pretty much do it on the fly.
And the older the stuff or the more recent the stuff is, the easier the conversion too.
Absolutely. But even still, I mean, I can take some really, really old stuff and turn it over pretty damn quick.
Yeah. It's practice.
Practice makes plausible. What do they look like?
Well, they look, rust dragons look a lot like metallic dragons. And I think the big differences is that their scales look rusty and oxidized.
Mm-hmm.
The wings aren't as big and powerful and thick as those of a metallic dragon. They're actually quite thin in appearance. And they do have what looks like an exoskeleton. That's gonna come in a little bit later.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into it now, but keep in mind the exoskeleton. There's some insect-like traits too, like antenna.
Mm-hmm.
And their wings are shaped somewhat like a butterfly's wings.
It makes sense.
And the weird thing about their teeth is they appear to be more part of the exoskeleton than part of the head.
I did see some of the drawings. It does seem to just meld right down as like part of the carapace from their jaws and stuff. It looks really cool.
And they're not native
to
the prime material plane.
No, they are not. But that's fine. Most dragons do. A lot of dragons have the ability to skip from plane to plane.
Yes.
Even in the early days.
So what about diet? What does a rust dragon eat?
Ore.
It makes sense, right?
Makes sense. Yep. It, of course, enjoy higher priced metals such as adamantium and gold and mithril, silver on, Wednesdays.
Well, they are dragons, right? So it would make sense.
It would make sense, yeah. Silver's their pasta day, I guess, Thank you for the link there, sir. And, but they're not always fuzzy. They'll eat just about any metal they can get their mouth on because sometimes even the dragon's version of a Big Mac will do. It said that rust dragon will eat flesh, but only will do so as the palate cleanser between different dishes. To kind of flush it out like a sorbet. Yeah. I'm going to have a paladin instead of a sorbet. Oh, that's good. Now I'm going to eat his shield. Yummy. There's a link on the page, the Forgotten Realms, fandom.com /wiki/rust dragon. So we got a link here to move along with. Lore. Now the fun stuff. Lore.
Yeah, lore is... This is what I love about the game is there's 50 years worth of lore out there, just forgotten in a lot of cases. Rust dragons aren't known to be violent or aggressive unless it's absolutely necessary. And some sages believe that many of the attacks from rust dragons occurred either out of hunger or simply out of being attacked first. They don't hoard wealth like other dragons do.
Because they keep eating it.
They have a fondness for gems, but you won't find like a massive hoard of treasure that you would with any other type of dragon.
Would their hoard be referred to as a buffet?
It probably would look like the Golden Corral on Friday at dinner time.
There you go.
Yeah.
Just a lot crunchier.
And nobody at the salad bar.
No one at the salad bar.
Some sages believe, and this is
a bone of contention.
It is, and I think it's extremely cool that a rust monster is the larval form of a rust dragon. And when you think of all of it, the antennas, the carapace,
exoskeleton,
whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I can see that. And it's a cool concept. A lot will discredit that, but you're the dungeon master, right? So it's up to you.
Exactly.
If you want to go that route, but it's a cool route to go.
Well, it always made sense, and I think about it because when I was pre-reading this ahead of time, and we talked about this ahead of a couple of weeks ago, it's like, hey, well, this would be a good topic. I started thinking back to when I seen the Rust Monster first come out, and I want to say I seen a beta version in Dragon magazine. I want to say that. I'm not too sure, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Dragon 88 had the ecology of the Rust
maybe
Monster.
That's yep. Okay, so it was Dragon magazine.
But I want to say before that there was a TSR publication. It was like a 1 or 2 page publication that was obviously done on someone's typewriter, and I forget the name of it, but I want to say the Rust Monster and a couple other things like maybe a lich showed up on it, and but it was very early on because remember when Tim Kask was with it. Tim Kask is like a living history book of
encyclopedia.
Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons, and he said that bought like a bag of these plastic toys, Japanese toys, and the Rust Monster was in it. That was like his inspiration for the Rust Monster.
Something close enough to
and the boule.
And the boule, not a bullet, it's a boule. But yeah, even way back when I first seen the Rust Dragon, I said, you know something? That looks a lot like a Rust Monster. And I started using the Rust Monster as the larval form even way before the discussion even started, because I wrapped an entire adventure around it where they wanted to take one home, and Mommy came looking.
Mommy being the
Rust Dragon.
The Rust Dragon. So the story goes that there were a bunch of old Rust Monsters, which I guess not many make it to the venerable years, because if you're not wearing anything metal, they're not really dangerous.
Right. So
they must get eaten a lot.
Or there's a whole bunch of stupid dumbass adventurers that go, look, it's only a Rust Monster. I'm going to kill it for the experience points.
Send the Rogan.
Yep.
He's only wearing leather.
Yep. Perfect.
So they somehow traveled to Acheron, which is a very a plane with a lot of metal.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of metal cubes. And they went about on this feeding frenzy and ate a ton of these cubes, got themselves all fat and happy, and spun a cocoon out of these metal threads. So they go in the cocoon, they do their cocoon thing, a metamorphosis happen, and they come out as Rust Dragon wormlings. And after like a period of like 4 years or whatever have you. And that's how a Rust Monster turns into a Rust Dragon.
Sounds perfectly plausible to me.
So what about them?
Well, Rust Dragons are not furious forces of nature that pyroclastic dragons are, nor are they violently insane like the howling dragons. Rather, they're simply hungry, and they attack carefully with their goal clearly fixed in mind. They don't tolerate too much interference in pursuit of that goal and readily break off of combat if a meal proves to be more trouble than it's worth. I know those paladins look really, really tasty, but they're pointy in some parts. And young and older Rust Dragons' natural weapons are treated as magic weapons for the purpose of overcoming damage reduction. Not too bad. Let's move on, shall we?
Well, it's a dragon, right? So every
It's a
dragon's got a breath weapon. Now, all of this is taken out of the Draconomicron. 2003 was when it came out, and it was one of those editions, 3.5 or 4. I don't remember which one. But this is straight out of the book. A Rust Dragon has 2 breath weapons, a line of acid, which makes sense.
Yeah, got to rust that fresh new metal.
And a cone of reddish brown liquid. Sounds like it should be coming from the other end. Right? That instantly corrodes and destroys any metal it touches. It reminds me of The Fly, kind of, with Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
Remember? Yeah, he vomited on the donut.
That still had a hand attached to it.
Attended in magical metals receive reflex saves to avoid this effect. So you could tell it's from some of these older, but
yeah.
Any metal is really susceptible. Iron, steel, silver, gold, even mithril and adamantine.
Gotta love it. Then you got metal resistance. A Rust Dragon is resistant to attacks from metal weapons. Against weapons whose damage-dealing part is metal, a blade, metal point, arrowhead, or even a mace head. A Rust Dragon has damage reduction equal to what a Rust Dragon 2 age categories older than itself has. Worm and Great Worm Rust Dragons have damage reduction 20 plus magic. Am I reading this right?
20 magic.
20 magic and 10 chaotic against metal weapons. And lesser weapons corrode when used against them, See rusting scales below.
Yeah, what does all this mean? The Draconomicron's got a bunch of charts for different ages of the dragons and different abilities that dragons have at their respective ages. Like Great Worm and whatever have you. It is one of those things that, as part, you really have to kind of dig through a lot of that kind of stuff if you want to convert
Fizzbands did something very similar as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was very this book was kind of chart heavy, which I was comfortable with because the old AD&D was like a math book. There were
I was having
charts and
senses of
conversion tables.
melancholy.
Yeah.
It's like charts and tables. Oh my!
And that the comfort one has in the math of the earlier editions. The rusting bite. So if they make a successful bite attack, any metal armor worn by the target creature will corrode, falling to pieces and become useless immediately, which sucks because if you're up against a dragon, you're probably pretty high level. You should be. If you're taking on a dragon, you better be a high level. If you're not and you get killed, don't be upset with your DM because you were dumb. And that's what happens. But my gosh, can you imagine you're like plus whatever plate just falling to pieces after getting bitten by this dragon? And then what do you do? Now you're screwed.
Jump.
Now you're a paladin running around in like the padded armor underneath it.
Sorry, that'd be pretty comical.
It
reminds me of the video game Dragon's Lair.
Yeah. Which is getting a movie from what I understand, which
I heard that too.
Was it Ryan Reynolds who was supposed to be in that? Which I think is maybe that's just like my inner like fantasy geek kind of being like, Ryan Reynolds would be awesome for this. It'll probably be like John Cena or something like that. But which John Cena, it's good. Don't come kick my ass or anything.
Yeah, we're not going to diss him. He's much larger than all of us.
I would totally be down for getting the shit beat out of me by John Cena because I tell everybody, this black eye and broken jaw, that's John Cena.
I named these two vertebrae that are shattered after him. Yes.
So the size of the object really doesn't matter, right? Whether it's a full suit of armor or a sword or something, it just rusts away as quickly as one or the other. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't really matter. Magic metal items are allowed reflex saves against a DC equal to the Dragon Breath's weapon save DC, which would be a CR rating now.
Yeah, the STR rating now.
For 5th edition.
Then you have rusting scales. Metal weapon with less than a +5 enchantment bonus that hits a worm or great worm rust dragon corrodes and is destroyed immediately with no saving throw. +5 weapon deals damage normally, but then must succeed on a reflex save DC equal to the dragon's breath weapon save DC or rust away. Spell-like abilities with like 3 times a day, a wall of iron, +1 a day, acid fog, repel metal or stone. So, +5 or better.
It's a pretty formidable opponent.
Yeah, for like the pacifist of dragons, yeah.
Yeah, so, if you're going to mess with a rust dragon and it really doesn't want to be messed with, then you deserve to get your ass kicked and to lose all those fancy magic items and stuff like that, right?
Because he's not breathing on you, he's like dysentery on you, and then he bites you, and everything's rusting away. You're lucky if any of your body parts don't melt too. But it's much more comical to just have them. I think in a previous episode I told you how I TPK'd an entire party with a rust monster because they kept failing the magic item saves. And back in the early editions, it would go off with a D10 damage with a 10-foot radius. And, of course, anything within that radius would have to make a saving throw, including the other magic items. And it cascaded through. At the time, we were rolling percentiles. And obviously, the higher the number, the better off you are. And no one in the party rolled under a 91 for every single magic item. And they all blew up, and they're all taking these D10 damages, and they're all in the area of effect and couldn't get out because it's cascaded through, and I ended up destroying like an entire fifth. I mean, it wasn't on purpose, they're the ones rolling the saves. But
sometimes the dice rolls
sometimes
just aren't with
the
you.
dice
Trust me,
decided
I know.
that the table was going to blow up.
Was Scott sitting at that table?
No, that was pre-Scott.
Just the numbers just would have said Scott.
Yeah. It just
That, and I think I still hold true to this today, even with fifth edition. That I love the failed magic saving throw and the subsequent explosive release of magical energy imbued into that item.
Yes.
And
it was a
D10
D10 for every plus and every spell like a ability. So if you had like a +3 that had that's 4D10.
Yeah, your Pally with the +4 sword defender,
Yep.
or was it Holy Crusader was the big
Holy Defender still.
Holy Defender. Yeah, that's
a big
that
boom.
Sucked. Yeah,
And then
that's
anyone
4D10.
within 10 feet of that takes that damage as well. And I was dealing half damage for anything for 5 feet beyond that. So you're still in the area of effect. But if you're in the area of the full effect, you and your items had to make saves. And if you're carrying, of course, you're carrying magic items as well. Now they went off. Now you're within 10 feet of the paladin who just blew you up, and you just blew him up. So you both just took 8d10. And then the guy next to that, and the guy next to that. And it cascaded because, at the time that they were clustered up into this little hallway and nowhere's to go. And in comes ambling the stupid little rust monster. Hey, can I have a bite? Nom, 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 nom. The rust monster made its saves.
So how would you use them? We know how you would use a rust monster, but where does a rust dragon fit into a campaign?
I think I would play out the pacifist. I would put him almost like Wizard of Oz-ish. Put him behind the curtain. Because it's, I'm mightier than this, and I'm going to do that, but you never see the dragon. You might catch a glimpse of the silhouette and the tail, of course, with the light making him much larger than it really is, and a couple spell-like effects wouldn't hurt either. But he's basically the pacifist, and he just wants you to go away.
Well, that makes sense you need a +5 for your weapon not to dissolve right away. So it kind of makes sense that he has those high DCs that you need to have, so you're not bothering him.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense.
You want to thump rust.
Yeah.
You done? Go away.
Exactly. Yeah. So it makes sense for him to have that and to be that pacifist. He just doesn't want to be bothered.
I'd make him a caretaker to a Lyceum.
Ours?
Ooh. I'm going to have to put out some resumes. Does LinkedIn have something for just put him as the caretaker of a Lyceum, a massive university, something like that. Mm-hmm. Where, hey, if you're here to learn stuff, great. No. Leave your armor at the door. What? And the weapons too.
Yeah, you'd be like a fat guy around cake. It can't be trusted, right? Well, you're going to put that cake down.
Yeah.
I'm going to have me a slicer.
There's a little room in there, and I can't fit in there. You'll be fine. But I mask it or use it. I think the kind of like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain thing would be very playable until later on they realize, okay, it is a dragon. It's not the big, gnarly red dragon that we were told. It's a brown dragon at first. Then you look a little carefully. Someone makes their Arcana check. No, that's a rust dragon. I've heard of these things.
I've been bouncing around this idea for a campaign, kind of like a beer and pretzels.
Oh yeah, this is very easily a beer and pretzels campaign.
And the rust dragon would be like a quest giver, but he would be, or she would be, the sagely person of this area. So the idea is it takes place in this massive salvage yard type of location, mm-hmm. right outside the major gnome city in our homebrew world. So right outside
they're always pitching away stuff that's perfectly good and blown up.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's this huge dump of all this metal stuff, so you would expect to see, if there were such things, like cars stacked on top of each other. So the rust dragon's been living here forever, since it was like a wee rust monster. And it's just been kind of hanging out because why not? People are throwing away all this food, and it's good food, so I'm gonna eat it, and it's lived there forever, and it's a sagely kind of dragon, which is relatively kind and relatively harmless.
Mm-hmm.
It's got maybe a pair of round spectacles that sits at the end of its nose, and it's got all sorts of information because it's lived a really long time. It's like a grandfather almost, and it's got this big area where it kind of lives and hangs out, and the characters would receive quests from it or go to seek sagely advice from this old rust dragon.
I like it.
We'll have to.
If the rust dragon takes on human form, although it doesn't really say, but I assume all dragons do, so they can get out and about. At least in my world, they would. Would he look like an older Pigpen from the Peanuts cartoon?
Oh.
Always had this dust around him everywhere he goes. It'd be like this brown dust on the ground, and looks like he's been working in the yard type deal. Always smudged up, and
I would think he would look like.
He'd look like a mechanic that just came from work from like 3 16-hour shifts back to back.
Yeah, like he would have the the button-up mechanic shirt with the oval patch that had his name written in it in cursive.
Yeah.
Like Roy or something.
I am Roy the Rust Monster, Roy the Rust Dragon.
Yeah. And I would say it doesn't say anything in any of my readings that they would take on a human form, but why not? Most dragons, I think, are most of the like the gold dragons, I believe, do.
Yes.
And maybe the silver. I know the song dragons, which have not made their way into 5th edition, lives most of their time as like an elven maiden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I just go with all dragons. I personally, not necessarily that. I personally, all dragons that I play take on a human form once they reach adult age, because it takes a lot of energy and a lot of magic to transform something that big into something that small, with just other than an illusion. So it's going to take a fair amount of magical energy. So yeah, an adult dragon.
So then would a white dragon take on a humanoid form that looked kind of like, what was it, the cold miser, heat miser from that Rudolph show back in like the 60s, where he had like the icicles on his nose.
Snow miser, I'm Mr. Frost.
That's
I'm Mr. Ten Below.
That's an old one.
And that's this week's A Monster in a Minute, featuring Rust Dragons. The links to the Rust Dragon and the Dragon magazine will be posted in our show notes. See you next time in the dojo. That's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe to the podcast for more great content. If you'd like to hear a particular topic, you can reach us on Facebook at the Dungeon Masters Dojo, or you can drop us an email at thedungeonmastersdojo@gmail.com. Thank you, and have a good day.